Sligo next, with Siobhán Ryan, Heritage Officer with Sligo County Council, is going to tell us about the heritage and regeneration of Ocono Street in Sligo. So, thank you, Siobhán. Now, Siobhán, you're on mute.
Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Thanks
Off
very
you go.
much, Ian.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks very much to the Heritage Council for the invitation to make a presentation on answers in relation to the delivery of the Historic Towns Initiative in Sligo. And I'll be reporting just not on my own behalf, but of the efforts of everyone that was involved, the local authority, particularly the building owners, the conservation architect, the contractor, and the key stakeholders as well that were involved in the project. I suppose just to let's move the slide on. Let's see. Yeah. In terms of the Historic Towns Initiative and the Sligo and its position under the regional spatial and economic strategy, Sligo was recognised as a regional growth centre. And I suppose in terms of a quick introduction to its historic setting, it began as a 13th century Anglo-Norman manorial settlement, and it was a strategic nodal site obviously for its landscape location and its port as well. And I suppose it was a town and a city that was fought over many years since its foundation up to the close of the Williamite Wars. So throughout the 18th century it was defined very much by its port, and it was the third largest harbour on the western seaboard. And from the 1830s onwards, its role as a market, services and administrative centre led to a sustained period of economic prosperity. Political uncertainty after World War I and also the collapse of port traffic resulted in prolonged economic stagnation, and that more or less lasted up until the late 1960s. So up until then, Sligo had very much retained its historic street pattern and the medieval layout of the existing town. And I suppose that since that time, there's been a high degree of vacancy and dereliction within the town itself, but I think that very much we've turned a corner here in Sligo in terms of how we're dealing with that and addressing it, and the Historic Towns Initiative has certainly been a help in that regard. One of the key catalysts really was the undertaking by Sligo County Council and BDP partnership were appointed by the local authority to develop a public realm action plan, which was completed in 2018. And I suppose that the key aspect of that, the key concept in terms of the vision for the delivery of that was to enhance the image and setting of the historic city through the enhancement of its streets and spaces, also the conservation of its built heritage, and for the purpose of encouraging people to explore, for businesses to flourish, and creating a vibrant street scene. And just last year, towards in the end of 2020, we also had the launch of the collaborative town centre health check by Minister Noonan for Sligo, which was another supportive measure and context and opportunities for discussion in relation to Sligo and its development. One of the really useful things to come out of the public realm plan was an identification of the street hierarchy within the town. So the red area shows the core streets, and that defines the heart of the city centre, and it really focuses the local authority as well in terms of where the pedestrian focus is. We're looking at minimal car parking and also car-free areas. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
If you can see the cursor, I'm just indicating where the O'Connell Street area is, which was the subject of the Historic Towns Initiative. So starting on the southern point of O'Connell Street, right up to the junction here of Lower Knox Street, that was an area which has also been subject to the O'Connell Street enhancement programme phase 1, which was for the resurfacing of the footpaths and also down to single carriageway right along the length of this, and that was funded undertaken in 2019 and was finished in June 2020. Sligo County Council is now moving towards the top end of this junction here, going across onto Hyde Bridge, We're also looking at redevelopment of the Stephen Street Cultural Plaza, and there's also an initiative under Sligo a Sligo Streets initiative, which is the refurbishment and public realm development of the streets in the Stephen Street area along Rockwood Parade and the adjoining public pedestrian laneways within the historic core. So we're kind of working around in a clockwise direction around the town, particularly in the historic core area, and we're trying to make sure that each initiative feeds the other and is complementary to the next. So the heritage-led regeneration of Ocono Street phase 1, and as Siobhán was mentioning earlier on, the importance of Lawrence collection photographs in terms of looking for historical detail. So this is one of the images that we had that we, I suppose, looked for inspiration from in relation to how we would go about the Historic Towns Initiative in Sligo and how we would deliver that over time. Our project area was focused within the Ocono Street Architectural Conservation Area, which is bounded by the red boundary on this map extract. The key focus, we focused again more tightly into the southern section of the Ocono Street Architectural Conservation Area, which is bounded by the hashed blue line there. I suppose that one of the reasons that we wanted to concentrate our efforts was to maximise the streetscape impact from the HTI input, and also the street is wider at this juncture, and it narrows down very much as you progress up the street in the northerly direction. It becomes quite tight before it opens again at the terminal at the end where the post office is right in front of us. So the objectives around the HTI deliverables for Ocono Street were to deliver a targeted high-quality conservation-led heritage regeneration scheme, to focus on the 6 buildings and 7 owners in Ocono Street, which we had identified as being key to the project, and we would work with them to deliver streetscape enhancement within that area in order to deliver wider benefits to the historic streetscape and also the public realm, and to add additional benefits, added value to what was already happening within the public space. When we originally put in the grant application, we had identified 10 buildings with 12 owners, and for various reasons, no more than just as Siobhán was highlighting in her previous talk, for various reasons, different buildings either couldn't proceed or they withdrew from the scheme, or it wasn't possible to resource the project adequately to ensure that those projects were taken on board and delivered to their completion. It's not that we will leave them to one side. We will certainly look to work with those owners in the future and try to bring those buildings on board, because we realise that they're important projects to deliver for Sligo. The grant aided works focused on the retention and conservation of historic fabric and also the reinstatement of features which contribute to the overall character of the Ocono Street Architectural Conservation Area. The buildings that we looked at are as follows, just starting at top left. Worley Brothers Jewelers, it's actually in ownership by 2 people. The upper section here is owned by one property owner, and then the full ground floor and the 2-story section on the right is owned by a separate property owner. The access for this is to the rear from a different street, and the roof in both of these buildings was failing very badly, and the chimney as well was in very, very poor condition, causing a lot of water ingress into these buildings and ongoing problems. The front shop front of Worley's, the older part of the building, was actually coming away from the facade and required attention as well in terms of pinning back. Hargadon's next door was suffering from water ingress, which was coming from the adjoining property, Worley's. So in terms of trying to solve problems within a streetscape, having buildings working alongside together, there's efficiencies, and also there's sense in terms of approaching buildings where one building may be impacting on another from a higher level. In terms of Hargadon's, there wasn't a huge amount of works required apart from, I suppose, window replacement to a historic window pattern that was correct. and there was a painting scheme as well done for both buildings. Mulani's is one of the buildings that unfortunately we got to the point in the project that we found that the contractor wasn't in a position to resource and staff the delivery of this aspect of the tender. So unfortunately that building had to be put aside late on in the project when we were certainly into October, and it was very disappointing for everyone involved. Kavanagh's, which is a similar glazing as to Heffernan's in Ballina, which is an interesting link. This was re-roofed on the front elevation, window replacement and masonry repair as well. Bridgefoot House is, even though it was scaffolded, was another building that the contractor just wasn't able to resource towards the end of the project, and that one had to be put to one side. The windows are perfect in it, but they were looking to replace the dormer windows, and we would look to work with the property owner again in relation to that. Party Boutique was one of the buildings that proceeded with window replacement at first floor level, obviously some structural repairs and roof, rainwater and decorations, and then also in terms of Hale Vape Shop, similar approach, and towards pharmacy as well. And these three buildings ran together in the streetscape, so they could share the scaffold as well. In terms of the delivery model, obviously the support of the department in relation to providing the funding at central government level, the Heritage Council in terms of the delivery of that, and working closely with Ian, Amanda and Colin Murray, the level of support at the Heritage Council in terms of delivering the HTI to a local authority is second to none, and it's at every opportunity there's somebody at the end of the phone to solve any problem, to assist, to advise, which is very much appreciated. Within the local authority, we had the Director of Service, Senior Planner, Senior Architect, Executive Planner and the Heritage Officer working together, and there was cross-directorate working and linking with other local authority colleagues within infrastructure, particularly in roads, particularly in terms of scaffold, in terms of problem solving within the street on a day-to-day basis. So that was extremely useful. Obviously the building owners, the 7 building owners involved, had a very, very important part to play, and they really were very open and very flexible in terms of how the project developed once it got on site, and we thank them very much for their support. Conservation architect Duncan McLaren with Daedalus Architecture in Donegal, a grade 1 conservation architect, and who was I had on speed dial all the time and he was just wonderful. And I suppose having that conservation oversight is so important. The building contractor, McDermott and Trirty Construction Limited, coped with the challenges that everyone faced really during 2020 in relation to COVID impacts on deliverable of programs. And our key stakeholders, who were so supportive right across the project, both from the application stage right through to delivery of the project on the ground. Sligo Business Improvement District, Sligo Chamber of Commerce, Sligo Tidy Towns, the Heritage Forum, IT Sligo in terms of the Yates Academy of Arts, Design and Architecture, and Sligo Tourism Limited. The timeline, I think, is useful because it shows us, how COVID impacted certainly on the Sligo project. With the application, we had Duncan had prepared preliminary work specifications for the HTI works. We missed once COVID came in March, we missed the window to actually carry out the detailed work specifications to allow us to proceed to tender stage, and we also required consultation with the owners. So the minute that the level 5 lockdown in terms of construction lockdown lifted in June, we were straight in to do the work specifications and to agree those with the owners. And subsequently, we identified 4 distinct work packages for the delivery of the Historic Towns Initiative, and these were issued to contractors, a short list of 8 for pricing. Our approach was to reduce risk and to have a range of contractors, and perhaps 4 contractors working across the 4 work packages in the street, so that if one contractor went down on a COVID related or they were off site for any length of time, at least the other projects wouldn't be affected. Following tender assessment and report to the local authority, we were in a position where we only had one contractor tendering for the works, and then we had to enter into negotiations to see would they actually accept and take on the 4, did they have the capacity to take on the 4 work packages within the street. So the contractor agreed that they were in a position to do that, and the owners were subsequently contacted again. The works were clarified, the costs clarified, and the contractor was appointed through contracts with the conservation architect and the contractor. So each owner had their own contracts individually. So they appointed, privately appointed the conservation architect and the contractor for the HTI works to their building. The option for that was that they could also add on additional works if they so choose to do so. In September, the owners signed grant agreements with Sligo County Council, which were drafted by our law agent. And this was in respect of the HTI funded works, including the owner's leverage of 20%, and included the cost and schedules for the HTI works. We were on site on the 16th of September, right up until the 13th of November, and we had ongoing significant COVID impacts on the contractor's side, which meant that two of the projects didn't proceed at this time. By November, the works were substantially completed and the scaffold was removed just in time for Christmas lights. I suppose just the the shopping around the Friday and the Cyber Monday, etc., which was looming on us, and the traders obviously were very anxious to be open for business and ready, for coming into December. In terms of finance, it was really important in terms of confirming the business owner name, bank account details, tax clearance, etc., particularly as some of the properties were registered for VAT, and as being registered for VAT, they could claim VAT back. So the grant amounts that were given were net of VAT, and of the 7 property owners that we dealt with, 5 of those were registered for VAT, 2 of them weren't. The grant agreement set out the grant allocations and the leverage funding required, and then a contract valuation was undertaken by the builder and reviewed and certified by the conservation architect. Sligo County Council undertook a site visit after that, the senior architect Siobhán, Martin and myself, to verify the HTI works on site. We subsequently undertook further review of the valuations that had been submitted to the local authority to confirm that the HTI works which were to be grant aided, and that process took about a day, 2 days to work through that iterative process. Following that, invoices were issued to the owners by the conservation architect and the contractor, and the owners paid the contractor conservation architect in full and submitted proof of payment to Sligo County Council. The local authority then paid the HTI direct to the owner. And I just thought there are many different models of how you would get the payment path recommended for your project. It's very much what is appropriate and what will work in your circumstances, but I just thought it would be useful, for anybody who's preparing projects for 2021, that they would know how Sligo County Council, how the local authority went about it in this year gone by. So you can see from the scaffold here, these were the public realm works that were undertaken as a phase 1 in 2019 and 2020. And this is work package 1, which is Worleys and Hargadens. This is work package 2. Work package 3 further down the street, and then one which wasn't scaffolded is these 2 high green gables which extends down, which is Milani Brothers, which is a superb building, one of our best within Ocono Street, and unfortunately we didn't get that one away on this occasion. So here's an image of Worleys and also Hargadens, and I suppose that this is before, and it really doesn't give you a really good idea of what poor condition, particularly the roof of Worleys was in, the impacts that it was having on Hargadens. Worleys, I suppose all of these windows were retained, and there was window replacement on this elevation because these are top hung. And we also would have moved towards, in terms of painting scheme for the street as well, and this is works in progress during September, October, and at the start of November. And this is Duncan McLaren and Sean Martin on site, just reviewing the works. So there was a schedule of works which included chimney repairs, included roof repairs, and the contractors were saying there wasn't a straight line in any of the roofs that they were dealing with. So there was roof repairs, slate repairs, there was chimney and lead repairs, there was rainwater goods replacement in terms of cast iron, there was mason repair or localised lime render. There was securing of OPEs, particularly at the back of the buildings, re-elevations to weatherproof buildings from the elements. There was window reinstatement or repairs as appropriate, and repairs to doors and shop fronts, localised repairs. Colour palette was selected, and then decorations were also undertaken as well. So this is Whirley's completed. And this, obviously, you can see significant works to the roofs of both buildings, and then Hargadon's to the side was also completed, and with the window reinstatement, historic window pattern reinstated. The painting painted in terms of the colour palette as agreed with the property owner and the conservation architect. I didn't have a clean shot that didn't have a skip in it, but that's a note to self. If ever I get the chance to make this presentation again, that image will be changed. But I suppose it just shows you the impact that the interventions have had within the public realm in Sligo. And similar works were carried on right down to these three buildings here in Work Package 2, and then also to this corner building here, which is part of Work Package 3. So we learned lots. It was an extremely challenging project, and I suppose the main thing that we learned was that to keep moving forward with decisions, and that there's always hope. And I suppose the key challenges that we were faced with was obviously the time frame and the impacts of COVID on that time frame. The challenges we had around procurement and the availability of contractors even to tender was extremely challenging. The supply of scaffold and materials to make available to the project in time and in a timely manner. We were heading into October, November. We had some bad weather when roofs were opened, which provided us with challenging circumstances. Planning for site access in medieval plot sizes where there's no backlands access, scaffold is particularly if you're trying to scaffold at the back of buildings, it's up over the building or it's through the building. And then you're also trying to plan for whether you're using a hoist or whether you're actually having to scaffold, and roads have a big part in relation to what options are available to you. Obviously the challenging retail environment, and we had an overlap of conservation grants from the Built Heritage Investment Scheme with the HTI. In terms of what's important, I think that everybody's on the same page is really, really important, and that shared vision is maintained, that we have Heritage Council and department support, that communication, no more than buying a property, location, 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 you can't have enough communication. It is absolutely critical to the success of the project. Strong conservation oversight and support, we're very lucky in that regard. Clear costings for HTI works, strong project management, shovel ready, and then dovetailing with other works and public realm works or enhancement projects that are happening within the street as well. So I think that the HTI, we've learned a huge amount in this, our first year in Sligo. It is certainly a new way of working. It is a way of working that allows local authorities to work in an area that they haven't worked before. I think local authorities tend to work in public spaces within the public realm and try not to get involved too much in terms of private property, particularly in terms of historic streetscapes. So I think it's a game changer. This model is an absolute game changer in terms of how the public interest in terms of our heritage regeneration and urban regeneration can dovetail. The Heritage Towns Initiative has certainly delivered what I would call real heritage-led regeneration, certainly within Sligo, and I think it's really evident from the projects that we've seen here today. And I would like to thank the Minister, the Department, and also the Heritage Council for your support in terms of the HTI programme in Sligo. And as Philip mentioned at the start, it's all about confidence, and we would certainly think that the confidence in Sligo is growing, and we thank you for your confidence in the project here and the delivery of the HTI in Sligo. Thank you.